Yo, guys, welcome back to JT's Mixtape. Appreciate you guys joining us. Once again, I have my co-host Bryan with me. How's it going, bro?
Pretty good, pretty good. Excited to see some weird stuff today.
Hope you guys enjoy this episode. And if you guys are listening on the audio-only podcast, I'd appreciate if you give me a 5-star review. That would really help me out a lot. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, without further ado, guys, let's start the show.
Come closer, my child.
I want to start with something weird, and I want to get your take on it because it is so weird that I have not really researched this, but this is really interesting.
Oh, I'm excited.
What are the chances of two rivers 2,000 miles apart mysteriously turning blood red at the same time? And we don't know the cause for either. Worried residents in both Lima, Peru and Buenos Aires, Argentina have shared footage online reporting strong odors accompanying the discoloration. One local described the scene saying, "It looks like a stream of blood. We have never seen it like this." Now, while we don't know for sure what's caused either yet, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's a scene from a biblical prophecy. I'll just leave that there for a second. Rather, in Peru, environmental experts believe that it could be caused by pollutants discharged from mines and drainage pipes flowing into the river. Despite this, local water supplier, Sidapal, assured the public that the water is still safe to drink. And they better be bloody right, because this river is one of the country's most important water sources. And then for the river in Argentina, authorities suspect the presence of aniline, which is a toxic substance used in dyes, and they believe that it could have been dumped there by local companies. But then again, if Jesus did want to come back, it's not a bad time.
That's hilarious. Like, it's safe to drink, guys. It's safe to drink with a chemical like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that was tripping me out. It was like that. Obviously, so the one river was not safe to drink, but the other one was, but they both look the same color. I'm not drinking that. I mean, like, I don't care what you say if it's safe or not. Like, are you kidding me? That's safe to drink. That red water.
Definitely not drinking it. Definitely not drinking it. They said so. Supposedly it was a mining leak chemical spill of some kind, which is a toxic. Like what? I mean, like you would have to be so ignorant to drink it. I mean, like, and it would make you dumber probably drinking it. And like the reality is, it's like nothing you drink looks like that. And you know what? There's another thing that happened in India in 2001. I believe it rained blood. Did you know about that in India?
No, I did not know that.
Did you know blood rains can happen in certain parts of the world? In some regions of India, notably Kerala, a phenomenon known as red rain can occur. This red rainfall has sparked both fascination and alarm because we don't know how they happen exactly. One prevailing theory suggests the presence of airborne spores or particles from algal blooms or microbial colonies. These microscopic entities can get swept up into the atmosphere and carried over vast distances, eventually pouring down as red rain. These events disturb the local populations, making them believe the world is coming to an end. But despite their fears, this event happened more than once, and they are still fine.
Anyways, it actually rained blood, and they checked the blood rain, and it would look like red water blood, just like that, basically. And it was all over a certain area in India. They checked the water under the microscope, and it was red blood cells without DNA, guys. It was insane. I'm so serious. And they hypothesized, they were like saying, maybe this is actually one of the origins of how life was started. In this circumstance where it rained down blood, literal blood without DNA. It was donut blood cells under the microscope without DNA. Straight up. It was very real. That reminds me of that experience. I mean, like, it could be a natural phenomenon, but I heard that was like a non-natural phenomenon. And there's also the other thing called red tide, where it's a bacteria that grows and it takes over and it kills all the, like, I mean, like, dude, I'm not going to drink that. Are the fish dying in that water? I wonder.
I mean, yeah, well, I mean, obviously that'd be a good reason to not drink it if you saw a fish floating up, belly up on the river. But, you know, I was even thinking too that, okay, so they had some kind of a chemical leaked into the river. That's got to be a lot to make the whole thing that red. I mean, like, because we're talking about, like, it literally is blood red. It's not like it's a hint of something. It was red.
And it's
Like,
going upstream too.
It reminds me of like when they dye the river green in Chicago for St. Patty's Day. Like they must have to put a ton of chemicals in there to make it that color. That's a big river. It looked like one anyways, but what do I know?
I didn't know they dyed the river green, but that is insane.
If we have any listeners down there, I'm telling you, use caution before.
Don't drink the water.
Yeah, I would say try the bottled water if you can.
Get a filter. Get like
sure
I would say Berkey filters, guys, are pretty phenomenal. If you haven't had a Berkey filter, this is not an advertisement, but I'm telling you right now, Berkey filters have been made illegal in the United States because apparently they filter so well. I have them and I use them. They filter the water so well that the chlorine doesn't go into the water. It filters out the chlorine and the fluoride, and the water becomes unsafe to drink because it can quickly form bacteria. And they've made them illegal in California. And so now Berkey, I believe, there's some like lawsuit thing because it's filtering out all the toxic poisons. It's like hilarious. Like they literally found a way to sue the people because they're making the water better to drink. I just think it's laughable.
All right, well let's go. Let's check the next video. I want to shift gears pretty dramatically here. We're going to talk about outer space and the pursuit of going to different planets, maybe, or maybe even back to the moon.
America is going to space again, and we're going there to stay.
A permanent lunar base, and we're going back to the moon, back to the future, and this time back to stay.
Turn to the moon by 2020 as the launching point for missions beyond.
And by 2025, we expect new spacecraft designed for long journeys to allow us to begin the first ever crewed missions beyond the moon into deep space, into the solar system. Not just to visit, but to stay.
It marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon.
We will return American astronauts to the moon
within the next 5 years.
We're going to go to the moon. We're going to have a base on the moon. We're going to send people to Mars and make life multiplanetary.
The United States will return astronauts to the lunar surface. We will establish the first lunar base camp and the first station in lunar orbit. We intend to land an international astronaut on the surface of the moon by the end of the decade.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Yes. No, they're not.
No, we know that they're not. You guys already know I made a video saying that they delayed the Artemis moon mission again to like the 2027 at the earliest. So that would have been Artemis started in 2017, the Artemis moon mission program. And so what I contrasted it was the Apollo moon mission started in I think 1961, I think, or something like that. So within 8 years, they went from starting the program to putting supposedly boots on the moon, and now
within 8 years,
within 8 years, and so now
with limited technology,
technology that obviously has nowhere close to what your phone has, and now we have all the technology in the world, and we cannot go to the moon from 2017 to 2027. Even at the earliest estimates, it would take longer to go back.
That is insane.
What do you to conclude by that? And of course, in my video, I was to conclude it's like they're not going because they can't, and they never could. Because if they could go in the 60s, they certainly could do it again, much faster. And I don't care, play that guy Don Pettit or whatever, saying we destroy the technology and it's a painful process to build it back. They didn't write anything down. They didn't keep anything from that time. Come on, guys. It's pretty naive to believe them at this point.
A painful process to make get the technology back. It's laughable. It's technology. It's calculations. You have computers. You have calculators now. You have we have a quantum computer that can do all this stuff. It's not a painful process to make it back. It's an impossible process to bring it back. That's the thing. It's not painful. Like we have the ability we can use AI to calculate our calculations at this point. Okay, you can do thousands of calculations and then figure it out. Okay, there is no freaking way that is it's laughable watching those clips. It just seems like, was that Reagan at the beginning? Ronald Reagan? Who was that? The president?
Yeah, it was Ronald Reagan in the 80s talking about
it's like a joke. He feels like I feel like I was watching a child's puppet show. I feel like I was watching a little kid, and I was like, here's the puppets going, oh, and then the little puppets did this. That's what it felt like as we were watching that video. Every single one of those people talking, I felt like this is a joke. This is a joke. The real joke is, does Elon know that it's a joke? I'm more curious about that. Like, do you think he knows that it's a joke, or is he equally a part? Is he fooled like the rest of people? Like, that's a more interesting subject.
He knows his car is not floating around in outer space right now. I mean, that was one of the biggest videos ever. Is like that he launched one of those Teslas into outer space.
And he said, it looks fake. That's why it's real.
Yeah.
And there was a rat that went by on the thing, right? There was a rat that went by.
I think that there's other videos, I think, where they had, like, it's on the space shuttle. There's lots of videos which bunch of tomfoolery with NASA that they have weird shadows in the background, bubbles, and I think at one point, I think there was like some kind of a rodent scurried by in outer space. Obviously, it's a very dangerous space rat.
Space rodent.
Yeah, maybe that's why they haven't gone back. Those things are dangerous.
Entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit.
I don't care what you say, that is a mouse.
It's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds.
Did you hear Elon's going to put out like some ads on the Super Bowl Sunday? He's going to put out like take over a whole block or supposedly or something. Did you hear about that?
I did not, but I mean, I imagine that there's a lot of stuff happening in the government right now, so I imagine that there probably would be. Is he promoting Doge? His Doge?
I don't even know. I just know that Super Bowl is definitely some kind of mass hypnosis thing. It seems, but they're gonna integrate the disruption to the mass hypnosis and hypnotize you in another way. Maybe, who knows? Like I have no clue what he's gonna promote. I think he's gonna promote something about USAID and expose some stuff apparently during the Super Bowl. I don't know. I've heard this is a rumor. I don't know how valid this is. So yeah. It's hilarious though. I wonder if Elon actually, like, I think Elon knows, but I don't think he knows all the details. I think he knows like a limited amount of details. You know what I mean? Like and I think he's like, he named his company SpaceX because it sounds like space sex. He literally admits to this, and that's why he named his cars Model S, Model E, X, Y. Okay, to spell sexy, because he's trolling. He's literally trolling you.
What about how the logo for X, if you mirror it, it looks exactly like the Freemasonry compass and square?
I mean, I wonder about that, but I mean, like, mirroring it seems a little. I mean, who knows?
Does, but it looks exactly like it, though. I mean, I'm one of those people who say, like, when people say, "Oh, you have to flip it, then you mirror it, then you crop it," because I remember talking about that with the Prince Charles painting. I was like, that's too much to try to find demon faces. I mean, like, this is just like, you show the other side of it. It looks exactly like it. All right, let's shift gears here. You know what? Hopefully this will come out. I'm not sure if I'm going to post this tomorrow or next week, but I think this video is kind of worth posting because 'tis the season, Bryan.
I often get accused of ruining things people like, so I'm going to try something different. I'm going to ruin something people hate, Valentine's Day. Now, if you've already wasted your money on chocolate or booked a dinner reservation at a very fancy restaurant with a very limited menu for this night, I'm sorry about that. But maybe you can use these excuses in the future as to why you're not celebrating this over-commercialized pagan holiday. First off, where does Valentine's Day even come from? Where the early origins are likely from Lupercalia, a pagan fertility festival celebrated in mid-February, and during this festival, men would strip naked, sacrifice goats and dogs, and then young men would take the hides of these animals and whip young women with them in order to promote fertility. Wow, that's romantic. Now, I'm sure somebody's saying, JT, this is a Christian holiday to celebrate the martyr Saint Valentine. Yeah, guy, I'm sure you're taking your girl out to Olive Garden in order to celebrate martyrs. Okay. No, what you're actually celebrating is this fat little baby with wings, Cupid. But actually, Cupid is only his Roman name.
In Egypt, he was Osiris. In Babylon, Tammuz. And the Phoenicians called him Baal. Yeah, how about that? But at the end of the day, you can still go out on a date on Valentine's Day. Just don't feel obligated to do it by Hallmark or the pagans. Or maybe you could just pick a different night. One that doesn't celebrate a chubby demon.
I might be a little biased, but I'm fond of that one.
You're fond of that one? It's funny because those little chubby demons, like they're cherubs. And I think those little cherubs, they're actually, there's some connection to them being Nephilim. Did you know that?
Well, no, I think that's why, like, that you see, like, so Cupid is his Roman name, but it's Tammuz, it's Osiris, it's Baal. It's, so what's interesting about, like, the ancient Phoenicians and people like in Mesopotamia, they worship Baal. I never knew it until recently that Baal was not a full god. Like, he was like, because he had a dad that I think might have been El. He had another god, and maybe it was a Dagon in a different part of that region. But yeah, he was partially human. So because it's the same entity. So like, how crazy is that? And the reason the Cupid is a baby is because, like, the Tammuz stuff is because Tammuz is the son of Nimrod, the son of Semiramis. It's all the same thing. So it's kind of like that when you see this cute little baby, it's like, it's not a cute little baby. It's the same reason that people say, oh, they worship a golden calf. Yeah, but what do calves turn into? They turn into bulls. So it's like a golden bull. It's a golden calf. It's like the only reason they're calling it, I think, in the Bible, they're calling it calf because it's the son of the other thing, of the other god.
So I think it's interesting because in paleo, so it's like Ba-El, right? So Ba is like, is that Bat? I think I'm trying to look it up in Hebrew right now. Ba-El. But in old, I think it's a bull. I think it means bull El, bull god.
Well, but what Baal means Lord. So it's just, it's kind of a generic name. It's kind of interesting too that his dad is named El, which obviously we know that El is for Elohim, means God.
No, it's the Aleph, which represents cow. My mistake. It's not the B. The A represents the cow. So Baal. But anyways, yeah, that's really, it is all connected. It is all, there's actually another connection to those little chubby babies. I don't know if you know this, but in the Isle of Crete, they are called, in the Bible, it says they are Cretans, and it calls them slow bellies. And it says they're evil gluttons, slow bellies, and the like, or whatever. And it says, rebuke them sharply. Indeed, they are. He doesn't deny this. Okay. He says they are evil.
That's in Titus. That's in the book of Titus, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. And he says they are, rebuke them sharply, and blah, blah, blah. But you know what it is? He says even one of your own prophets attests to them being evil gluttons and whatever. And that prophet that he's referring to is not of the Bible. It's actually the oh gosh, I'm drawing blank on the person he's referring to, but he is a historian, I guess you could, or a poet. Actually, he's a poet at the time, and he was arguing that the Cretans were claiming to be children of Zeus. Okay, and the Isle of Crete is right next to the birthing place of Zeus. And these Cretans were claiming to be children of Zeus, but they were all dwarfs. They were midgets.
Interesting.
And he was saying, no, they're not. They can't possibly be children of Zeus, these little dwarf, because they're like tiny, right? And Zeus is giant. And they're saying, no, we're children of Zeus, yo, we're Zeus's kids. And it was like a whole isle area of small people claiming to be Zeus's children. And they were born. So the little chubby babies come from dwarfism, which is actually genetically tethered to the children of the Nephilim. They're like third or fourth generation Nephilim that came from Zeus. So like Zeus was born giant, right? Like, and he's a Nephilim giant, right?
Well, I mean, I think Zeus is kind of like, I think, remember me and you kind of like maybe kind of were not quite aligned on what Zeus was, because you would say Zeus was a Nephilim, but I guess I don't know for sure, but I've always perceived that Zeus was actually a full angel. Like Zeus wasn't. That's why I always thought Zeus was an angel, fallen angel. Obviously, I thought that he might have been like the devil himself. It's hard to really say for sure, but it always made sense to me that to the Romans, Zeus was Jupiter, and Jupiter was like the head god in like the new age they lived in, and the old gods were, I believe, were antediluvian, and so those are the ones who were like locked up in Tartarus.
I thought, see, I kind of wonder if like Zeus is the first generation of the Nephilim, and then Zeus's children are like Hercules, were like second gen, and then there's some of them were like third, and like, but Zeus re-inhabited other people after he died. Regardless, his body was, his soul was the inhabiting soul that went on, regardless of whether it was first or second generation. He went on to inhabit other people, and in fact, most recently, person that we know that he inhabited is Obama. Obama was inhabited with the spirit of Zeus, and in fact, you know it's true because there's actually Obama spoke from the Temple of Zeus. Do you know that? You can type in Obama Temple of Zeus.
I do remember that when it was one real famous speech he did, they set up basically the stage to look like Satan's throne.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well,
yeah,
he
no,
went
no,
to,
I don't think
he
I
went
don't think
to
he
there.
went there because I think I want to say that I could be mistaken about this, but I thought it was set up to look like the altar to Zeus that's in Pergamum, or was in Pergamum,
Oh, yeah.
and is now in that museum in Berlin.
Well, that might have been a thing that they did, but that would make sense because he's still Zeus. No, Obama is at the Temple of Zeus, bro. He's literally right there at the Temple of Zeus, and he actually went there.
Where does that say that's at?
He,
There's a lot of temples to Zeus.
This one is behind the scene. President Obama visit the Acropolis in Athens. The Acropolis in Athens, Greece.
Okay,
the main one.
Yeah, well, like I said, there's probably a lot of.
So he speaks from with the Temple of Zeus behind him.
Interesting.
And you're just like, okay, that right there is literally Obama chilling, because you got to understand these spirits, even after they inhabited Zeus, whether he be the first gen or second gen, his spirit has continued on, and it embodied all of the Caesars, every one of the Caesars that same demonic Nephilim spirit embodied. And that's why you see them putting an eagle with the Caesar's coin, and it'll put the Caesar's head with the eagle on the backside. All throughout history, you'll see a coin with the eagle's head and the person's head and the eagle on the backside. Even George Washington, Zeus probably embodied George Washington, and and then just like kept going down the line up through all the rulers.
So I'll just give my little spiel on what I think it is. I do think that you have. I believe that the first generation antediluvian gods, like where they say like Saturn and Kronos and some of these other ones, I believe that those are the ones who got punished before the flood, or whenever they got punished. I guess we don't really know exactly, but those are the ones put in the pit. And so that's why like you had this new pantheon of gods that was really more like kind of almost like a triune thing. And that's why I said you have this unholy trinity. And so you had the Sky Father, and then you had his son. And that's why I always thought like it made sense to me that you had Zeus, I believed, was like the devil himself, because because based on what we read in the Bible, he did not get locked up until, of course, in the short season, we believe he did get locked up later. But during the biblical times, he was not locked up. And so that's why he would have ascended to like the main god, because he was kind of alone. And then you have Zeus has a son, which is Apollo. And Apollo, and most people don't realize it, like much like Baal, he's partially human, because Apollo's mom was not fully a god. She was partially. She was like really interesting, like stuff like I've done videos about this, but like historically, like Sargon of Akkad, many people believe that was Nimrod. And I've made the connections where maybe those are the same. Like I believe like Apollo could be the Lucifer character that's mentioned in Isaiah 14, where he's the son of the morning. He's like he's like a son of the morning star. So it's kind of like he's a level below. And that's why I believe like going into the Bible, it's like, yeah, the Zeus, the throne of Satan, Pergamum, Turkey, that's your devil. We can only really speculate about this because it really is hard to know. But again, you have like stories like Hercules. If you read the story of Hercules, he's basically the same as Apollo. He's, the stories are like, you turn them just a little bit and it's the same. And I think that's why, like, you think, like even the devil himself, he's had many names. And of course, I keep bringing up the Rings of Power, but it makes so much sense that you have like that like the Sauron character, he's like, they ask him his name, and he's like, what he says, I was awake before the breaking of the first silences, and since then I've had many names. It's like, it's so clear he's talking about the devil. But what I think is fascinating is there's a very famous temple to Jupiter in Baalbek, Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they have like the gigantic, like the trilithon stones and everything. And it would look like that the Romans had built a temple to Zeus or Jupiter on the remnants of like a much older, like because like those are the ones that have the 1,000,000-pound stones, like probably the biggest. I think they're probably the biggest cut stones in the whole world under this temple to Jupiter. What I found really interesting is that Alexander the Great, he got into war because modern day Lebanon used to be Tyre, and they, like, when Alexander the Great was obviously on his conquest, he fought with the people in Tyre, and he wanted to worship at this temple. There was an island like city part of Tyre that had like this massive temple, and it was the temple to Melkart. Alexander the Great wanted to worship there. But it's like, why would he care about that? Because to the Greeks, Melkart, or the Macedonians, Melkart was actually Hercules. And I think that's really fascinating, because eventually, like, they won't let him. They say you can actually worship in the inland temple. That's not good enough for him. And eventually there's this famous siege that Alexander the Great lays siege to this and destroys the whole place. And I believe there's a prophecy about that in like the book of Isaiah about what's going to happen to Tyre. Really fascinating. And to one more level of that is you had in the mythologies of like Tolkien, like the ultimate kind of devil character who's like even above Sauron. His name is Melkor. Melkart. Pretty interesting. And you know what? I think I got the perfect video to kind of go right along with that, because I found something about that. Let's see.
Baalbek, which is located in Lebanon, if there was one example, one ancient site on Earth that is evidence of a lost, ancient, advanced civilization, Baalbek has the largest stones that were ever quarried in human history, the largest stones that were lifted, stacked, and transported in human history. And when I say stacked, they were perfectly lined up. What is the weight of that? That's 1.7 million pounds. Each of them, and there's 3 of them. If you were to go to the quarry, there's ones that are 1,200 tons and even 1,500 tons. This is mind-boggling.
Dude, it's crazy there. I think it's really interesting. Is like, I think about the size of the Nephilim, like how big they actually were. And there's that verse in Enoch, which it says they were 3,000 ells tall, which is like just ginormous, right? And it's like so big.
It's thousands of feet tall. It's like, yeah,
it's like almost like a mile tall. And when translate, well, I think that's a translational error. Personally, I think that's like just a distortion in the text. That's my personal perspective. But what if like the first generation of Nephilim were like the Kronos and like the Titans, right? And the Titans were just so massive, right? And then the second gen were half the size because they were half the spirit, right? Because angels are giant. So angels mate with a human and it produces this giant being. But then when that thing that's only half angel and half human mates again, you get quarter angel. So it's like half that size. And then that person mates again, you get another half that tall person. And then that person mates again until you get down to the human height variances. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, what if the height's just half? So it's like a quick height distribution channel drop down. You see what I'm saying?
No, that makes sense to me. You know what? I've seen another video, and I'll have to try to see if I can find something about this. But some people believe that who created the original city that obviously the Romans built upon, during the times of Jesus, that it was actually Cain who established the city down in Tyre.
I've heard that theory, but I think that goes against the Nephilim theory, because people like
I
don't
necessarily think it does, because if you really think about it like that, so this is the thing about how the book of Genesis is written. We're told how old these people lived to be, but we don't even actually ever look at the crossover and how they lived. So like you have, I'm not sure exactly if it says how old Cain became before he died. I don't think it mentions. So if you think about it, like did Seth live to be almost 900 or over 900?
Something like that. Close. Not over 900. I think under, no.
Probably,
anyways.
either way. So let's just say around 900. So you're talking about like the Cain might have been around for a long time before he passed. So was he around in the times of Jared when the Watchers came down and they were doing all the funny business? Probably. He probably was. So if he was, then obviously he would have been around during the times of the genetic corruption, and he would have been a leading force in all that stuff. So
912. That's how old he was.
That's how old. That's
Seth.
how old Seth. Yeah. Well, I mean, so the point is like that even if it wasn't Cain directly, you have Cain's sons and Cain's grandsons, and they're all living during this certain time, and so maybe Cain himself set up part of the city. I mean, not to say that he set up the trilithon stones and all that, but yeah, that, I mean, even if you're talking about like giants, like we're trying to perceive in like mythologies, it's still hard to wrap your mind around that they moved those stones out of those quarries and stack them up. They weren't even at the bottom. I mean, that is mind blowing.
That is, yeah, it's literally like hard to even fathom how or what. They had to have been a big person. It had to have been a big person involved in that to some degree, I feel like.
I mean, that aligns with all the other research we've done, where all the ancient people to us, who are not ancient in the Bible always refers to the ancient times they're talking about before the flood. So the times of Moses and David and stuff like that, I mean, that's clearly ancient to us now. Mm-hmm. But the people that are further back, they would refer to the ancient times, and they always have stories about how giants did all the stuff that you can't explain. And it does give a plausible explanation. But again, like Bryan have often said, it wasn't just because they were big. They obviously had technology. They were smart too, because they cut the stones too, and they moved them, and they built something that's lasted basically forever.
That's true. You know, I love this speculating. There's this show called Unanswered Oddities, and it's like on Instagram, and it's like Unanswered Oddities, and it's some dude that does AI art who like animates it like they're aliens in the future, looking back at the the race of humans that used to exist, and it's pretty hilarious because it's literally like us, like, and it's like they get everything wrong. They call us humans, and they're like. Exercise. It's a ritualistic thing where they beat their bodies into submission to get better looking bodies, which is just like they see it as like a ritual. It's just like comical seeing some of the stuff on the channel. But it's like us right now. I feel like we're looking back at these things in the past, and like I can only imagine the people like what they're us trying to guesstimate how we were doing it, like laughing if they knew all of our theories for what we were doing. This seems hilarious.
No, it's very clear that it's. I mean, that's why it kind of bothers me when people act like they really know, because I mean, I'll always say when people say, "Well, how did they do it?" And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I believe giants were involved because that's the stories are told that people have passed down oral traditions that giants were involved. How did the giants do it? I don't know that it was just because they're really strong. I think that they had different ways.
They might, yeah.
And anyways, I've got another video that I think will go perfectly into this.
The buildings in which we just saw and how heavy they were, right? Tons and tons of stones. Well, here's a stone that probably weighs about 20 tons and can barely move from a truck, right? You're trying to move that, the truck's moving, everything's falling, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And especially, let's say these buildings were built in the 1800s or 1700s when there were only about 1,000 people and none of this technology existed. Well, that's another good question. How on earth did all of those things get built, right? Or moved, or something like this, right? Or something like this. I think it goes to show that when we look into the past, things were very, very advanced, but we were told that we were supposedly, like I said, running around on horses and wagons and on... So we're going to go back to 1893 Chicago, and this is not the Chicago in which I know, right? The Chicago I know does not have statues like this and look anything like this. But this is what Chicago looked like before it was reset, right? The fires that we heard about in Chicago and all those things, they were removing all of this, Look at this detail. This is a completely different city in which we know of today. Because look at this. Look at the architecture. Look at the design. Think of how hard it would be to create all of this, right? We can barely make a little bean and wrap it in mirrored paper, let alone statues like this made out of copper, right? Look at this archway. Look at the detail here. This is in Chicago. This is old world history which is not taught about, right? They keep us in the dark. They don't teach us about our true potential and how there used to be a unified, advanced society which built like this all over the world.
What was on that top of that Chicago, that old archway? It looked like the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse up there,
well,
just like it does on the gates of Berlin.
That imagery is in a lot of places. I believe it's also on the Minnesota State Capitol building. Let me see. I know that I've seen so many of these that they're just crazy.
I want to see that archway thing, that because they had like some they had the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse above it, which is really interesting. I wonder that's where, like,
I don't know that it's necessarily the Four Horsemen, but yes, there's similar imagery. Like, can you see that, Brian?
Yeah,
that's right there. That's in St. Paul, Minnesota, I think. See if I can find one.
That's ridiculous.
It's something that that I've seen on lots of buildings. Yeah, but you're right. I think it's in Berlin as well.
Dude, that's insane.
Okay, there's a closer view right there.
Oh, there it is. There's a Apollyon pulling the horsemen.
Well, I don't know. So we do have four horses, right?
Yeah.
And we have like two women who look like their boobs are hanging out. And then you have this guy who looks like a Roman guy.
Yeah,
Talk about
Zeus
some excess for
wives.
the state of Minnesota, huh?
Yeah, that's Zeus with his two wives, probably, or Apollyon, his son, and then those are the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Yeah, but the interesting part about all that too is the fact that we're told that those buildings in Chicago were temporary, and they have the same kind of imagery as the permanent building, state capitol building in St. Paul, Minnesota, and also the permanent buildings in Germany. So it's, like I said, it's kind of inconsistent, and it makes no sense. It's very contradictory that it's like, well, it's not like they couldn't build buildings like that because we're told that they did. We're just told they didn't build as many of them in places like in America, except for when you talk about Washington, D.C., where they have tons of those kind of buildings, and it's pretty consistent. It's like I said, it makes no sense. But yeah, like that kind of stuff is everywhere. And kind of the contrast in that video, I thought he was kind of going a different way because he was showing those gigantic stones, and then he actually did show a Baalbek Lebanon, and then he shows them trying to lift one 20-pound stone, load that one 20-pound stone into a truck. Yeah, like now we're talking about the stones that we were showing in Baalbek are 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons. How in the world did they transport that stuff way back in the day? And that's the interesting part, is like you have the oldest civilizations seem to build with the biggest stuff. And then obviously then you're talking about the old world stuff or even the Roman stuff. It's highly advanced, but even Roman columns and like columns you see, like most of the time they're multiple pieces. You can kind of see how they would have done it. It's super impressive still. But when you go back to the oldest stuff, that's the stuff we talk about, like the Indian temples that are like literally carved out of a mountain. There's one stone. They didn't have more than one stone. They carved the whole thing out of a mountain. I like you said, I love trying to theorize how it could have happened, but I don't think we'll ever be able to figure it out.
Yeah. Craziness.
All right, let's go. You know what? I think I've got a few that actually go right along with this topic. This is an interesting one. I don't know if you've ever considered this one, Brian.
The Sabu disc, found in a 5,000-year-old Egyptian tomb, is a 24-inch artifact carved from fragile stone. Its three curved blade-like fins and raised center give it a design unlike anything else from ancient Egypt. Some believe it was ceremonial, others think it was a tool, or even part of an early machine. Older than the Great Pyramid, the Sabu disc remains an object of speculation, and its true purpose may never be known.
Brian, what the heck is that, and what do they use it for?
Of course. Here's the thing. It's possible that it's out of stone, but it may have been petrified into stone. Maybe it wasn't originally carved out of stone. Maybe it was originally carved out of some type of softer material that was moldable. Like maybe they molded it and then it became into stone. Like maybe it was it's some kind of wheel looking thing of sorts. So it does look like it has some rotating component to it. It looks some kind of machinery of some kind or some kind of ceremonial ritual thing that like people could hold on to. I don't know, but that would be my guesstimations.
That's when I was watching the video, I was thinking that seems really, really strange to be chiseled out of stone. Like it doesn't look like it's made out of stone. You know what I mean?
No.
When I watched that video, because I've seen that wheel before, and I never thought that it was carved. I think I actually like your theory on that it was once something else and then it became petrified. It became stone, because that does seem like they had metal. So why would they make that shape out of stone? Especially those thin kind of blade looking things. That just doesn't seem like something you'd make out of stone, because it did look like it had some kind of functionality. It did not look decorative.
Yeah, it does. It could be ceremonial, and like those are just handles, and maybe it had like a thing that you put in the middle there. Like I don't know. It looks subtly ceremonial, subtly mechanical.
I think you just chalk it and just throw it in the basket that they had some kind of technology, because I think it likely had some kind of workings and it was involved. It looked like we only got part of whatever that was involved in.
Yeah, demons also have an ability to manipulate rock on a level that we have not seen, because they've been able to manipulate stones and rocks and then cut into the dolmens and all kinds of stuff. And like it's a whole nother thing that we're just beyond what we are capable of.
Yeah, for sure. This one is a good one because this goes back to when we were talking about ancient megaliths in the United States.
Dude, how on earth did it get that flat and perfect on the top?
I mean, that looks like somebody carved it that way. I mean, I already know. I don't even have to look it up. Somebody will say that happened naturally, but that's really, really, really square to be natural like that. I mean, like I said, it's funny, kind of like when Max said, is that the reason we all recognize that doesn't look natural is because it's not. Because and then some gaslighting archaeologists or geologists will say, oh, stone always does that. It's like, but if it did it a lot, we wouldn't think it was unusual. We know what we see. It looks like somebody created that. And obviously we don't even have a clue what the other kind of stories around that region are, but I'm sure if you talk to the Native Americans, oh yeah, giants did that, and then the sky god rained down fire on them, melted the rest of their dwellings.
Where did it say where that was at?
That was in Wyoming.
Wow. So apparently the New World might be older than the Old World that we think.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I believe that again, like the antediluvian people, they could get to probably every place on the whole earth, and things have changed since then. So like when you see remnants, it does kind of seem like the remnants that would be left over would be stuff that was giant stones that would not be, even the Great Flood would not move certain things, or it could move them around a little bit, but I mean, they would still be, they wouldn't be destroyed. And so there's remnants of it. I think that makes sense to me, but also we really have no idea, because the mainstream doesn't acknowledge these things, and so we would never get real stories about what could have been here before.
Yep, totally get it.
Oh, this is a good one.
Totally natural formation. What are you talking about, JT?
So that's in, as Trump would say, China. Okay,
Oh,
so we're
China.
always taught about the Egypt pyramids. Well, that seemed like a place that had more pyramids per square inch than I've seen anywhere in the whole world, and we don't ever get taught about any of that stuff. And like, why does it make any sense that that stuff is in China?
Bro, I don't know, but I'm gonna get on like that Red Note app and then like start messaging the Chinese people and being like, "Yo, send me videos of the pyramids."
They'll probably be like, which ones?
Yeah, dude. There's so many, I'm sure.
It's wild. That's wild, dude. Because obviously that seemed like a lot of them in a very short vicinity. Yeah, and don't even tell me that the mountains just look like that. There's too many.
Yeah.
There's too many sharp angles. Like, that's not what normal mountains look like. Again, don't gaslight me. It's unusual that mountains form like that, because I've never seen mountains look like that before.
Yeah. Yep. And they don't the right angles on the edges and then the lines. There was like straight steps, it almost looked like, on that.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is
they're just eroded over time.
Is what somebody would say, and I agree with them. Even the Great Pyramid in Giza and the other pyramids, that you see the blocks that are stacked up to make the pyramid, that was not the finished product. That was what's under, like, likely some kind of a limestone covering that made it all smooth. So like they would have built it like this, and that would have been what the structure was. But even I think the mainstream does say that people in that region raided those pyramids later to use them for building other things.
Yeah.
So as rough as those things look, they look like mountains now. But yeah, what did they look like in all their glory?
Well,
people might have taken the finished product and then use it to build other things,
supposedly
build roads or build whatever.
Yeah, the pyramids of Giza supposedly had like a white stone finish that was all over them, right? Something like that.
Yeah,
they supposedly. Well, I don't know how they figured that one out, but apparently
I know at least one of them, doesn't it kind of still have the kind of on the cap, you could kind of still see where the coating was over top of it. Even actually, I saw a good video, and maybe I'll have to pull this up for another video, was that the castles, that a lot of castles that you see like the rough kind of like really stone looking brick, whatever castles, that's only them in like decay. Because what a lot of castles look like, even like in the business I'm in, is that we would sometimes do brick houses and then we would stucco over top of the brick to give a smooth finish. And it's almost like the rough stones you see on lots of kind of like medieval shows and castles. That's not how they looked back when they were new. They looked smooth and almost like your Disney castle, like they're coated with something else. So we see there's just countless ruins around this realm, and we don't really know what they look like when they were new, but they didn't look like, obviously the people who could build things like that, they were not rough on the outside, they were beautiful.
Yeah, that's the lie they want to feed us.
Well, I mean, maybe
with the spoon.
Well, maybe that's it. Like that, when you see like the pyramids, which is the step big blocks, it's like, okay, well, I could see primitive people doing that. But then when you see, if you could see what they really look like, then maybe that would expose more of all the holes in the narrative that, no, that does not make sense. I think this one's good. I literally in the podcast just talked about the Biltmore estate. So this relates.
This is one of the most expensive Gilded Age mansions in America, dubbed the Breakers. Conservative estimates put the current total value of this, quote, summer cottage at $500 to $700 million. It was built in 1895 for the Vanderbilt family as a summer cottage, and after spending 3 days filming this house, there's a lot from the 1800s that just doesn't really add up. Like, if we can still build homes that reflect and amplify universal beauty, why don't we anymore? Welcome to the Great Hall with 50-foot high ceilings, meaning you could put a 3-story house in this Great Hall. The room draws inspiration from Italian palaces, and the ceiling is covered in 23-karat gold leaf. Welcome to the dining hall, where you've got 2 baccarat crystal chandeliers and tons of Gilded Age ornamentation on the ceiling and the walls. Look at the space, and look at the size of this fireplace. Think of your pantry at home. This is the pantry at the Breakers Mansion, complete with a double height ceiling and display cases for all of the fine china. Connecting from the pantry, you have the kitchen, which is completely fireproof. Welcome to the music room, which you probably recognize from HBO's The Gilded Age. It was actually filmed in this room. Now, the home is just under 130,000 square feet with 33 bedrooms, 20 bathrooms, and 27 fireplaces over 5 floors. And I haven't even shown you underneath the house where you have the tunnel system. Make sure to follow to see the rest of this mansion.
Of course there's tunnels.
Of course, yeah, they cut the tunnels part off.
Why would there not be tunnels under there? Bro, that house is in the United States. That does look like some kind of European just palace. And that's in Rhode Island?
That's ridiculous.
You know what's even more ridiculous, and I have to play this right now because I was just talking about that. On my live recently, I talked about the Biltmore estate, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. So let's watch a quick video about that, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
This is the Biltmore estate. The Biltmore estate is the largest privately owned home in the United States and sits in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina. It was originally built for the grandson of railroad tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt, George Washington Vanderbilt II. And the stunning 250-room Gilded Age mansion is still owned by Vanderbilt descendants and is open to the public. In the 1880s, George would visit his mother near Asheville and loved the area so much he decided to build a summer home there. Construction lasted 6 years, and the Biltmore took 1,000 workers to complete. But it was finished. George called it his little mountain escape. George lived there with his wife, Edith, and their only child, Cornelia. And North Carolina families loved and praised the family for the business and work they brought to Asheville. Sadly, George passed young in 1914. The Biltmore was passed on to his daughter and then grandsons. The Great Depression hit hard, and in 1930, the Biltmore estate was opened to the public at the city's request to bring tourism. Today, it remains a major tourist attraction with 1.4 million visitors every year. The French chateau-style mansion is stunning and was built to replicate the working estates of Europe. I visited the Biltmore when I was really young with my mom and my grandma, but I really want to go back. Have you ever visited?
The Biltmore, I think, is like the maiden name of like one of the Vanderbilt's son's wives or his mom's maiden name. So it's a Vanderbilt house. Do you know when the Biltmore estate opened, Brian? 1895. The same year they said the other one got built. So the Vanderbilts built 178,000 square foot house in North Carolina. The same year they were building a 118th square foot house in Newport, Rhode Island. I know they had a lot of money, but that seems real sus. What do you think?
That's a lot of money, bro. That's like so much money that you don't know what to do with it. I mean, like, how much money do these elites at the top level really possess? You know what I mean? Like, we look at people like Elon Musk and we're like, he's an elite. He's the number one. Oh, Donald Trump, he's a bad guy, guys. Dude, I think Elon Musk and Donald Trump are freaking ants. I think they're peons. To me personally, I think they're peons. I think they're ants. I think we live in a group society of ants, okay? And we're all trying to figure out where the grasshoppers are. They want us to think that Elon's a grasshopper and that Trump's a grasshopper. Bro, they're ants just like us. And we get them And they get up to the top with their little ant money, and then they get the big ant at the top of the hill, and we're like, "Oh, Elon! Oh, great Elon ant!" And then the grasshoppers come to Elon and go, "Hey, listen, Elon, you know that you're a pretty successful little ant. You know, we want to bring you into the club a little bit. We'll tell you that space is fake. We're not going to tell you the rest of the agenda, but you can know that space is fake, and we'll make you an Elon." Elon's like, "I want to go to Mars," and they're like, "Well, we'll let you take over Mars, sure, but you got to know that this level." But they don't know he doesn't know all the rest of it. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a little ant at the top of this pyramid. But they're the people that really are the elites that have more money than the people they publicize on a Forbes thing of the statue. Bro, they own freaking islands. They own more than money than you can even imagine. They own country.
They own all the countries, I think. No, they own all the banks. And when you see like the Vanderbilt estates, I think they were saying in modern day worth of that house was the one house in Newport, $700 million. I mean, maybe it's worth $1 billion now. I mean, the point is like that house is what it really is priceless, because they could not make another one like that. And again, that makes no sense to me that you could not recreate that house today, because
Trump couldn't make that.
All the art in that house and all the detail, it's like every square inch of those places is covered with something that's ornamental. It's absolutely insane. And like the idea that they're doing that at the same time they're doing the exact same thing in North Carolina. What? Yeah, I mean, let's just say we believe the narrative that those houses were not just founded and cleaned up or something. That like the amount of money and power that you could do to do that one place in another place. I mean, like, show me an example of that happening right now. You know what I mean? Like, show me the greatest estates being built right now, and then show me 2 of them being built by the same family at the same time. And even if you did, there's more means to do that kind of thing now. Not back then. And again, like you go to a place like Asheville, North Carolina, you could imagine how much in like the middle of the sticks in the boonies it was. Like Western North Carolina back in the 1890s.
Bro, it was like a castle in the middle of nowhere, probably.
It almost still is. It almost still is. That's what I'm saying. It's absolutely crazy. All right, let's we got a couple more here.
Strange places you didn't know existed. Part 7. Slanic Salt Mine, Romania. Open for visitors, this retired salt mine is naturally air-conditioned, and many say the pure air has healing properties. It features a family-friendly environment, with playgrounds, table games and other activities, as well as a section for patients with lung cancer to come and rest in the pure atmosphere. Would you visit a place like this?
Just our carved idol head of our god that we just happen to have in there. No, this is not a satanic temple worship space where we worship false gods and deities. There were giants that needed a bigger ceiling. No, this is just for funsies.
It's totally bizarre. The thing is, like, so that statue or idol was the Emperor Trajan. Like I said, I don't even give the dates, but like, he was a Roman emperor. And it seems the whole thing seemed really bizarre to me, because of course it was a salt mine. So like an industrial thing. I mean, did they mine how many feet high did they mine up into this place? They were just taking salt out of there, and then they just decorate the place with just crap, bounce houses and crap like that for kids. And
that is so weird.
It fits. It obviously does not fit. Like what they had, like Christmas lights and stuff. Like the whole thing is bizarre. It's like the scale of it.
For such an epic.
The scale is ridiculous. I mean, how tall were those ceilings?
Bro, it's so epic, and how tall that is, and like they have those stupid little like plywood walls with crappy little beds and bounce it. Like what a man. I would love the Nephilim to see what their hall has become.
I think you're right though. That's the vibes I got was this is the Mines of Moria. This is straight out of Lord of the Rings. They walk into this thing and they're looking up and it's like, who and how could they have done this? And of course, people in comments will say, oh, guys did that. You guys don't believe anything. And you're like, it's the biggest salt mine in Europe. I think that, yeah, like I want to see more details about how they carved it. And like, why would they have to dig it out that much? Because I mean, we've seen mines before on this show, typically they're not that tall. So like, what kind of equipment would they use to mine out someplace that big? It obviously was not a natural cave because the ceiling was like those sharp angles.
As they were digging down, I guess.
They said, "Hey, let's sculpt this out perfectly."
They just kept digging down and down and down and down and down. Maybe I guess that's probably what they did until it got so low, but the ceilings became so high. But I think it's lovely that the humans.
But like I said, the ceilings were like perfectly shaped out dormer, like
maybe they started there
vaulted ceiling.
They started with that, and then they just dug straight down. You see what I'm saying? So like they started.
Yeah, but why would they? Why would they dig the ceilings out? Why wouldn't they dig the ceilings out straight?
I don't know. That is a really weird, peculiar thing to do. I feel like it seems more decorative. But I love that humans go in there today and they're like, "Whoa, let's put a bounce house in the corner." Yeah,
let's put a bounce house in here.
Let's put a bounce house in this corner of the room here. It's hilarious and so comical. Oh man,
it is. It's ridiculous. Let's see if we got maybe we'll have one more.
Let's put a bounce house.
Actually, I got a two-parter. Maybe we'll play two more videos and then we'll end here. Maybe old world destruction here.
Was Japan bombed during World War II to hide traces of old world Tartarian buildings and structures? We all know or can look up the official reason for World War II. But was the destruction and therefore covering up of old world technology at least an ulterior motive? After all, was it really necessary to lay waste to entire cities towards the end of the war when it was almost already won? You can see that similar to Germany, Japan looked better prior to the war than it does today, even with so-called modern technology. And while there's theories that nuclear weapons aren't quite what we're told they are, that doesn't change the fact that Nagasaki and Hiroshima were completely leveled. Not to mention even more damage was done to Tokyo due to persistent carpet bombing. It was such overkill it seems it was about more than just winning a war, and as well as depopulation, was about cleansing the earth of an advanced civilization that existed before us.
Now, what's really interesting about Japan is, does it really make sense to the narrative at all that they have so many identical buildings to the rest of the Western world back before World War II? Like, we're never told that the Romans conquered the island of Japan. So why is there Greco-Roman stuff in Japan during that time? Like, what does the narrative even say about that?
Sus. There's obviously some connection they're not telling us. And like, the thing is, like, I don't believe in nukes either, but they did multiple firebombs supposedly at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They just firebombed unequivocally, like just the amount of just decimated the whole area. Like they just like multiple bombs. And like they wanted to flatten the city building because like you got to think about this, guys. Like, what is war? War is such a stupid concept when you really think about it. Like this is like our idea of war is not what it used to be. Okay, war back in the day was like groups of people fighting against groups of people to take over land or to take over the area or to defend their place. Today, war is not a thing. It's not that anymore. Nobody's fighting to take over your land, to take over your area. Like that's not what it is. And taking it over does not include bombing it to oblivion. Okay, that is absurd. Like the concept of what they're doing over in that other country right now that we can't talk about, that place, that's completely wrong. It is so wrong and so evil. They're destroying stuff for no reason other than to destroy it. It's not advancing either party. It's not like making things better. You don't bomb the crap out of something and then go, oh, cool, now we're going to go there and take this area. Like there was no point in bombing the crap out of Japan. There was no point unless you were trying to destroy architectural structures. Because when you want to take something over, you just move in and take it over.
Well,
and they weren't trying to take it over because it's an island. They just wanted to bomb something. They wanted to create destruction.
Well, back in the day, the way you won a war was you destroyed the other army.
Yeah, not their buildings.
Not all their cities. Like you didn't try to just turn every city they had into rubble, kill a bunch of civilians. That's the interesting part about World War II. It's like, did the good guys win? I mean, maybe there was no good guys, but I could say after we'll show this video right here,
dropping bombs is not the way to win a war.
The good guys did not win World War II.
Was Dresden in Germany bombed during World War II to actually destroy old world Tartarian remains? Like most of Germany prior to the war, Dresden resembled something out of a fairy tale, and could have been the most preserved evidence of an advanced civilization existing before us, littered with old world buildings comprised of some of the most complex and intricate architecture you'll ever see. But the debate rages on today whether the bombing of Dresden was justified. Officially, up to 25,000 people died during the attack, but initial reports were much higher. Critics have argued that industrial sites that may have been conducive to Germany's war effort were actually located outside of the main city and not even targeted, suggesting that this was an indiscriminate attack on people and architecture alike, which only came towards the end of the war, supporting the argument that this cultural hub should have been left alone.
Very fascinating and very obvious that they were trying to destroy some structures for sure.
Yeah, Dresden. It's funny in the video he says 25,000. I've heard 250,000 civilians died in Dresden, and this is definitely. There's no debate. It was not justified. There's no debate about what they did because the Germans were defeated at that point, and then they were just destroying. Like, I mean, the amount of times they bombed that city, and they were bombing people trying to save other people. And they were firebombing them. They were saying that people who were in bomb shelters at that time would have been suffocated because obviously the firestorms that were outside of it were sucking all the oxygen out of underground shelters. It was obviously one of the just worst atrocities. And it's like, yeah, those were supposed to be the good guys. I mean, it really is. I said, obviously, if you guys want to go check out the podcast we talked a little bit more in detail about World War II over on the Rumble channel. On episode 15 and a half basically of JT's mixtape over on Rumble. We couldn't talk about it on YouTube because we can't talk about that war too much. But that being said, yeah, like it made me sick when I was watching more unbiased versions of the World War II account. There is no justification for so many things the Allies did. And yeah, like when you see like that they bombed both Germany and Japan well after they were already beaten. And it does make sense that in all the old world research we do and things like that, maybe they were bombing places that just were not going to stand up to the scrutiny of like, how did these places get built like this and why during this certain time? In Germany, maybe I can see you could justify it a little bit more because there's old world stuff all over Europe. But it does seem like in Japan, I do wonder if they said, you can't have all this Greco-Roman stuff here. Nobody's going to ever understand it. It won't make sense because we're told that Rome did not make it to this part of the world. But yet their buildings are here. The architecture is telling a different story. In the same way that, as we just showed, that there's pyramids in China. Well, who built them? And why? And when? They would rather just not answer those questions.
I definitely think it was probably to destroy some evidence of something. There's a dude that survived the war He survived both the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and he was alive, and they recorded him, and he like talked about it, and it was like he survived both bombs. How are you going to survive both nukes in the middle of the blast? Well, maybe the blasts weren't exactly a nuke. Maybe there were multiple bombs, and it's pretty obvious, and they were targeted to destroy buildings and structures and things that were, you know, it's like, dude, that's not why you bomb things. You bomb it to destroy it. Like, people, war, if it was really just trying to be a war, they would just move in and take over the people's political spaces, not bomb them to oblivion.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone, again, like, check out that other podcast we did over on Rumble. But other than that, I would encourage you to guys research some of this stuff yourselves, because, yeah, I know people listening to me and Bryan, we already have a skeptical mind, and we don't believe the mainstream narrative. But I mean, like, I would encourage you to pursue that where it goes. I mean, like, that a lot of things that you're sure about, and the things that are repeated into our skulls every year over and over again about who are the bad guys in certain conflicts and the certain things that happen, who are the good guys. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about re-examining that. I think it's important to do that. It can be sickening at times, but I think that, again, our faith is in Jesus. We know that men are not good, and we know that the people who run this world are not good, for sure.
Yeah.
So would they lie to you about things like that?
Absolutely.
Yes. And if we are in Satan's little season, which we believe we are, then yeah, like, that gives more motive why they would commit such atrocities and cultural just destruction. For what reason? To hide what happened before, things that don't make sense to the narrative. Well, anyways, guys, on that note, this is the conclusion of the show. Appreciate you hanging out, Bryan. Obviously, Bryan and I are going to continue to make some more Ancient Angels, so you guys check out Bryan's links in the description. I appreciate you guys. Obviously, if you guys like this content, please subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on the audio-only podcast if you can. I love you guys. God bless.
Later.
Come closer, my child.